Thank you. How's everyone?
Good.
Good. So, as Megan mentioned, I am from slightly east of here, about 9,000 miles east in Nairobi, Kenya. I was born and raised in Kenya, and I came to Springfield, Missouri 18 years ago. About 2 countries west of Kenya is Rwanda, and that's where my story begins. So in 1994, Rwanda went through what some have called one of the most brutal and the most efficient genocides in known human history. Up to 1 million men, women, and children were murdered for the crime of being born to their parents, of belonging to the minority Tutsi tribe. And when the genocide was going on in Rwanda, I was in Kenya. I was 17 years old. I was getting ready to graduate from high school. That's me in the blazer and tie. The really cool looking one. You can spot me. And I was oblivious to the fact that there was a genocide in Rwanda. My main concerns were the upcoming national exams, my girlfriend, and MC Hammer. So 10 years later, in 2004, I had graduated from KY3, and my wife told me about a documentary called Ghosts of Rwanda on PBS. And I remember watching that documentary, and that's when I fully understood just how severe the genocide was. And it actually led me into a depression. I felt like I lost my faith in humanity, and I was despairing. About a year and a half later, I heard about workshops that were going on in Rwanda, where they brought together 10 survivors and 10 perpetrators of the genocide. And I was inspired to make a documentary about this process. And the documentary that I worked on for 3 years is called ICYIZERE Hope, and it's a documentary that has changed my life and continues to change my life. In December of 2007, as I was editing the first version of ICYIZERE Hope, political violence broke out in Kenya, where 1,200 people died, and 500,000 people were displaced from their homes because of disputed presidential election results. And Genocide Watch actually said Kenya was 1 step away from genocide. So the violence was so devastating that international mediators flew into the country, Condoleezza Rice and Kofi Annan, and tried to work out a power sharing agreement. And this is a very famous photo of Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the UN, with the President, Mwai Kibaki, and his challenger, Raila Odinga, having tea. But most people didn't really feel like this was a peace agreement. Most people felt like this was at best a ceasefire, that the needs of the common man and woman were not being addressed. And that could lead to a danger of repeated cycles of violence. So in 2013, just a couple of months before the elections happened in Kenya, a very famous editorial cartoonist by the name of Gado released this cartoon showing scenes from Kenya's social media. There are about 14 million people online in Kenya, many that use Facebook and Twitter and so on. And there was a lot of vitriol being spread over the internet, which was really just a sign that we were a step away from taking it to the streets. So I managed to raise some money through Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Some of you contributed. And I went to Kenya. I went to the largest slum in Kenya called Kibera. Kibera is the epicenter of the post-election violence. And my aim was to make a documentary similar to the one that I filmed in Rwanda. And I managed to film a gathering of 10 victims and 10 perpetrators of the post-election violence in Kenya, with the hope that I'd make a documentary that many Kenyans could watch and realize that if people in Kibera could begin to heal, then there's hope for us as well. There's hope for the rest of the country. During that time, I met a lady by the name of Pascalia Nduko. Pascalia runs the Inua Mimi Children's Rescue Center. She's run it for the past 24 years, almost single-handedly. Before the post-election violence, she had 14 children in her care. During the skirmishes, 8 children disappeared, and to this day they have not been found. I also met a young man by the name of Davis Kabala. Davis took part in the political protests and the looting, and he was also in a mob that ended up killing a man. And witnessing that, he said he felt so helpless, and it was traumatizing for him, and he realized that he needed to get help. And so when he heard about these workshops, he signed up because he wanted to find some release. The challenge is, in Kenya, there's 1 psychiatrist for every 500,000 people. So if you double the population of Springfield, Missouri, and assign them to 1 therapist, that's the situation that we are facing. So how are people going to get the help that they so desperately need? That insight inspired me to share a stress relief technique that's very simple yet very profound, that helped me in dealing with the loss of someone that I very dearly loved. It's a technique that helped a lot of people in the workshop. I share it everywhere that I speak, and so I'd like to very briefly introduce it to everyone if you're willing. Just humor me, those who are. So we tap on the forehead. I release all anger. Tap on the temple, and you can repeat after me. I release all confusion. Underneath the eye, I release all anxiety. On the chest, I release all hopelessness, all helplessness, and everything else. It's safe to let it go. Grab your wrist, take a deep breath, blow out, say peace. So in February of this year, I went to Kenya. I gave Kenya Until Hope is Found to DVD pirates. I posted it online. I shared it with local TV stations and had some interviews with radio and TV. And I took every opportunity to share this technique because I figured some people are in the fight for their lives. They're looking for something it could help. And I had a lot of really positive feedback from listeners and viewers. This led me to the realization that the greatest malady, not just in Africa, but around the world, is unresolved psychological trauma. Stress and anxiety causes wars as much as it does fistfights, heart disease, suicide, homicide, and the list goes on and on, right? So if that's the case, then the greatest malady in Springfield, Missouri is unresolved psychological trauma. Okay? Greene County, Missouri has one of the highest rates of domestic and child abuse, unfortunately, 5 times the national average. And in my opinion, that is because of unresolved trauma that continues to go on unchecked for generations. But the good news is there's always hope. The truth is that there can be no social change without personal change. That the greatest gift I can give the world around me and the people I profess to love is my own healing. Okay? And when I love myself enough to ask for help, then my wounds become my strength. So no matter what we have been through, as a nation, as a community, as individuals, we can heal. Let us cling to that thought and may it lift us up. Thank you.